Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to continue working on this True Spirit frame up restoration. We've got to get these leaf springs installed on the front. Let's get to it. In order to hang the springs underneath the frame, I need shackles. This is one of the originals here. This one does not want to come off of this spring. That one came off without too much difficulty, but this one you can see it still even has this bushing here. It does not want to come out of this. And the threads on both of these, and in fact these are a little bit messed up from driving them out. And you can see the originals, this looks like it's pressed and probably swaged into that plate. If you buy replacements, it's just, these two flat pieces and then bolts. A replacement one is something like about $50 a piece, which seems a bit ridiculous for 2 bolts and 2 pieces of flat steel. So I'm trying to reuse these. I'm going to try to get this one out, and then I'll run a die over these threads, see how it looks. Then these things need to get cleaned up. The original nuts are this type of a lock nut. It looks somewhat like a nylock. It's not near as tall, but it doesn't have a nylon insert. Instead, that hole is not perfectly round. It's kind of oblong. Those tend to, they go on, and the fact that it's oblong means that it's squeezing down on 2 sides, which pulls it apart as it goes down on the bolt, and that tends to hold it in place better. I'd like to replace those as well, but the reality is these might end up just being bolts and nylocks. I've got a video on how to take these bushings out of the frame. I'll put a link right up here. If you can't drive it out, heat works. I'm in the garage and it's cold outside, so I don't want to open the door, so that'll be a smoky, smelly mess. So the third way, so you can get a drill bit that is the thickness or a little bit less than just the rubber, and we're going to drill all the way around so that that rubber comes out, and then this should fall through. The problem here, as you can see, the chuck hits this bolt, and the bit, even in best case, wouldn't get all the way through, but here it's getting maybe halfway through, and I can't drive through from the other side because this part of the shackle is in the way. You can see it pushed it through all by itself. So it's knurled here and pressed in. A lot like a lug bolt. So we'll remove those, find bolts that are this diameter, and we'll just run them through. I mean, I suppose we could always weld them on, but these bolts are just garbage at this point. Turns out there's more than one use for a ball joint socket. This front spring mount on the frame, if you look right here, you can see it moves. So I'm going to cut the rivets off on this and bolt it down just so that both of them match. I might as well pull the other one off too. So I'm going to cut both of them off. It'll let me get it clean underneath. That way I can coat them and bolt them back down. Of course, the remaining one is right here, and it's inside this box. And underneath it's inside a box, so I can't just grind it off. The amount of crap that's up in here and on the back side of this, taking those off to clean there is probably not a bad thing. I think I mentioned before you should always wear gloves when using the grinder.
That's why. So here's some fun. I've got this cleaned up. It's basically ready to get rust encapsulated. I'll probably go over it once with acetone just to make sure it's nice and clean. I already sprayed it down with brake clean though, so it's pretty good. So this is, good enough to be assembled. I've got a bunch of other small parts, shackles and brackets and stuff that I took over to a local place that does media blasting. And this is what he gave me. I mean, this thing's so clean, it looks primed. The surface finish from that media blast makes it this nice dull gray. Paint's going to just stick right to that. So the moral here is, if you can get it to one, if you can afford it, and if you've got somebody local, take them to somebody to have them blasted. I don't have the equipment to do this kind of job, but boy, that thing looks great. And it probably took him no time at all. Maybe a half hour to do a whole box of pieces. I have a couple rivets here that I cut the heads off of, but they don't want to drive out very easily with a punch. So we'll give this a try. This is where the spring bushing goes through the frame for the front, and it's still got these shells that I did not pull out. I've got another video that shows how I got the rubber and inside sleeve out, but not how to get these things out. Put that up here. Now these, they don't really like to come out. In fact, used an air chisel. The hammer itself was a Harbor Freight one, that kind of a piece of crap, and it didn't work, so I just used a hammer. But I've got this driven in, and it's not super stuck, but it doesn't want to come back out. But I think that's the general idea. So I'm going to try to drive that out of there with an air hammer. This time I'll probably come from this side. There's two of them, one that's pushed in this way, and another one pushed in from this side. I've got to get them both out. I've got polyurethane bushings, and they go right into the frame without that shell. We'll first try driving it out with this IR air hammer. We'll use this blade. This one typically used for cutting sheet metal, but it should fit down in there, and we'll see if that'll drive this out. You can see sometimes they don't really want to come out, but it drives them out pretty well. Let's take a look at the housing on the frame now. There's some rust and crud in there. Come on, focus. Doesn't look too bad. Might be a little bit of damage right there. To clean this up, first I'm going to go in with a rounded file, get any burrs or anything like that out. Next, I'll spray some WD-40 in there. That's just as a cleaner and a lubricant for the hone. Then we'll use this brake hone. It's a little bit of a gouge there, but the bushings, they'll pad that out, so it won't really make much difference. Looks pretty good. So we're ready to assemble it, put some springs on. For bushings, I picked up this energy suspension set. Here's the part number. It says it's for 72 to 85 four-wheel drive, basically everything. That's a little suspicious to me, but whatever. Really, I wanted it for the body mounts. I bought this some time ago before I even started this project. But it does have spring bushings as well. Next up, we have to put these in. These are energy suspension poly bushings. So they're going to go in here one from the other side, and then this sleeve gets driven in between them. It's real simple. The important thing is, before you put them in, use this lubricant that comes with them. It looks like it's probably a silicone lubricant, to make sure that they're well lubed. Then I'll lubricate this one and put it in from the other side. Then lubricate this sleeve and put it in. The front mounts for these front springs, one of them was loose. They're normally riveted on, so I cut them both off. They're going to go back in like this, and I got some 7/16 grade 8 flange bolts and flange nuts. The nice thing about flange nuts, it's not real obvious here, but that hole up here at the top is oblong. It's not just round, so it acts like a lock nut just as is. So we'll bolt these from the top. Frame's upside down right now. So from the top down and put a nut on each one. I've heard some people say that you shouldn't use grade 8 for something like this. You should use grade 5 because grade 8s are more brittle. I'm not exactly sure where that comes from. If you look at the specification for these, both the tensile, which is, stretch strength, as well as the shear strength, which would be something, snapping it off, are both much higher than a grade 5 or a grade 2 bolt. So they're stronger both in tensile and shear strength. So it's, I guess, an old wives' tale or something, but they are not more brittle. I mean, yes, they do break rather than deform, but at a much higher, force than either a grade 5 or a grade 2. So shouldn't have any problem with this. The reality is all of this is mild steel, so there's going to be flex in all of this. And this is going to, absorb a lot of that and probably deform long before these. Now that it's snug, I'm going to square it up to the frame. So I'm going to measure from this face to this face, here and here, and make sure they're the same. Next, I'll torque them down. A 7/16 grade 8, recommended to 52 pounds. Next up, we've got to bolt in the actual springs. I've got brand new springs for this. I figured if I'm going this far, I might as well go all the way. I just got these off of Rock Auto. They're actually just a relabel from another company. You can see this part of the spring curls down. Down is this direction on it right now. The frame's upside down. So this goes to the rear, and at the other end, it curls up, and it goes into that hanger up front. And I bolt it in up front first, and then come back here and put the shackle on. For bolting it together, I bought brand new grade 8 fine thread bolts. These are 1/2 inch. Just because the heads on these aren't that big, I am going to put a washer behind it. This coating is to protect it somewhat from rust, but these still need to be coated once I get everything assembled. Using a grade 8 nut. These are nylocks. Going to go on the back side of these. For the rear here, we have a shackle. These are the pieces from the original. The original shackle bolts were pressed in here, but the threads on them got pretty screwed up when I took them out, so I've got to go back with bolts. I'm going to use the same grade 8 1/2 inch fine thread bolts for these. So I'll go through the frame first and then come up through the spring. Final step, because I don't know what they coated these with, so I don't know what kind of corrosion prevention it provides, and also because the ends of these, just from moving them around, they're all chipped up. I'm going to coat these with chassis black just like I did the rest of the frame. And there we go. Front springs are attached, coated, ready to go. That's all there is for... That's all I've got for today. See you again tomorrow. That's all there is for today. See you again next time.